I find myself in the middle of nowhere, a small town sheltered in an endless sea of pine trees. It's a miserable place, with only 3 things you can do: hunting, fishing, or go to the church. But my life was not always like this. Before I wound up in this 2-bit town, I used to live with my mother by the sunny shores of California. And that was 4 months ago. And then some idiot rammed into her car and fled the area, leaving my mother in a coma. Now I've been shipped down here to nowhere, to stay with Paul, my estranged father, and Jim, my brother. Every day I wake up and I expect to hear a call to tell me she's woken up and I can finally get out of this dreary place. But that never happened. And that old bastard, he just keeps telling me that I should get comfortable here, that I shouldn't expect her to wake up anytime soon. I don't care what they say. She's not brain dead. She'll be fine. I know she'll wake up. Eventually. So I still haven't fully unpacked my bags, or bothered making any friends. It's not worth the effort. Not that I'd even want to befriend the hillbillies in this town. But something has been eating at me. This deep burning hatred, it flares up whenever my thoughts turn on my mother. The damn bastard, the one that crashed into her. He got away with it. The police can't track her down, and I can't think of facing her again. Not until that bastard gets what's coming to him. So that brings us to the present, standing in this clearing of this dark forest. The full moon hanging in the bright night sky. Thin wisps of clouds drifting across the black expanse above, backlit by the brilliant display of the unfamiliar stars and constellations, the one usually hidden by the city lights down in California. It was cold in this nowhere place, so I was wrapped in 2 wool shirts and a deep blue jacket. A cold wind buffeted at my back, sending a chill down my spine, and set the trees gently swaying back and forth. Down at my side stood Spot. The damn beast was a mutt, half Labrador, half something unknown. He had a thick dark coat with many small light brown patches. He had been bothering me ever since I arrived in this town. The mutt followed me around everywhere, always trying to draw some pets out of me or coax me into throwing the ball for him. And he never left me alone, not for a minute. He was always at my side, always hyperactive. And his large bushy tail was wagging madly as we trudged into the clearing. In the middle of that clearing sat a large circle, deeply cut into the forest floor. A pentagram was carved inside the circle, and within the pentagram sat an intricate sigil. And on each point of the pentagram sat a small fire pit, burning brightly, emitting faint sparks under the wind's encouragement. I was responsible for this strange scene. I had tried everything I could to find that bastard. I reached out to a private detective, but I couldn't afford him, and Paul wouldn't pay for it either. And the police told me to stop calling. They would tell me if they found anything. They're absolutely useless. I reached out to all of the stores near the crash, and not a single one had any cameras facing the street. I mean, how was that even possible? But I won't accept it. I can't. And if mortals can't help me, then maybe something else can. So I turned to help from the dark, leather-bound book clutched in my right hand. It was the genuine article, a book that belonged to Michelle Renfield, a local healer that lived in Massachusetts in 1753. While she was burned at the stake, her grimoire survived. At first, I went searching the internet. I made a few posts, looking for help or advice on summoning anything that could help me. But I mostly got junk responses, scammers or people trying to waste my time. And then I received a cryptic message. It read, "I have a powerful grimoire, a genuine article. If you're serious about this, call this number." I was very skeptical, but I gave it a shot and called the number. Hello, you messaged me about having a book, one that could be used in summonings?" His skittish voice nervously asked. Yes, I have the book you need." Alright then, how much is it going to cost me? I was asking slightly sarcastically. I was expecting a scam. You don't pay for this type of thing, not with money. You can have it, you can just take it, but you need to make me a vow. And an oath. You will follow its instructions perfectly. Alright? I swear on my life, my mother's, hell, my own damn soul. If it can help me get him, I'll follow its instructions to the letter. He then let out this sigh and said in a much calmer voice, "Where am I sending it to?" I gave him the address of my new school, and to my surprise, 2 days later, down at the school's reception, a package had arrived for me. Inside the package sat an ancient book. Old worn leather held together ancient pieces of paper, and on those paper were neat handwritten notes. It really did seem like a real grimoire. Inside the pages of the book I found detailed instructions and a sigil, and the same one carved into the forest floor. I spent the next 2 weeks in the forest preparing for this ritual. As per the book's instruction, the sigil was cut at least 10 inches down into the dirt. Buckled to my belt was a hunting knife, and as instructed it was desecrated. I got some holy water from the church, dripped some of my blood into it, and added petals from the nightshade flower. And it took me a full week of scouring through the forest to find those blooms, and then let the blade soak in the liquid for an hour. Took it out of the mixture and dried it over a candle's flame, while chanting a repetitive script in an unknown language. I burnt the blade black. I don't really know why, but the blade stayed black afterwards. I couldn't even rub the soot off of it. And then I waited for the next full moon, snuck out of the house, and took Spot with me. I guided us to the center of that sigil and said, "Spot, sit." He cocked his head to the side, staring up at me with those big dumb eyes, sitting down in the center of the pentagram. I drew the knife in my right hand and knelt down next to Spot. I placed my hand gently on his head, petting him. He started to lick at my hand, gently tickling me. I'm sorry, Spot." I shakingly raised my right hand and pressed the blade against his neck. The dumb mutt just kept licking my left hand, tail wagging in the dirt. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and shakingly thrust my right hand forward, while pulling him close with my left hand, clutching him to my chest. He let out this horrible yipping sound. He fought against my grip for a second, and then with a low whine, stopped struggling. I opened my eyes and looked down at Spot. My vision was blurry, but after blinking a few times and wiping the liquid from my face, my vision cleared. Spot lay still on the ground, spilling out a red torrent from his neck, which ran down into the furrows cut into the forest floor, soaking into the sigil. I could feel his blood leaking down, soaking through my pants and the lower part of my shirt. It was warm at first, but soon as the wind blew through the clearing, it chilled me to the bone. And then I started the ritual. I sat down in the center of the pentagram and started to focus on my breathing, following the instructions from the book. I emptied my mind of all thoughts, focusing only on my breathing. And soon a sensation of falling overcame me, and I sat falling for quite a few minutes. And then this light appeared, and it resolved into a dark room. Cold stone walls surrounded me, and in front of me stood a large altar, and atop it sat Spot, happily wagging his tail. And then I walked over to the altar and called out, both in my mind and in the real world, "Lord Satan, by your grace, grant me, I pray thee, the power to conceive in my mind and execute that which I desire to do, to end which I would attain by thy help. Almighty Satan, the one true God, who livest and reigns forever and ever, I make this offering to you, and entreat thee to inspire Abaddon, the Prince of War, to manifest before me, that he may give me true and faithful answers, so that I may accomplish my desired end, provided that it is proper to his office. This I respectfully and humbly ask in your name, Lord Satan. May you deem me worthy, Father. And I felt something stir in the dark corners of that stone room. And then, "What the hell are you doing?" The voice pulled me from my meditation. I jerked my head around and saw him. My brother, Jim. He was standing behind me at the edge of the clearing. His eyes were filled with anger, and he was slowly walking towards me. Jim, what are you doing here?" I was trying to figure out some excuse. "What am I doing here? What are you—" And his voice trailed off as he saw Spot. He just stood there, frozen, staring down at the dead dog. "Jim, please, it's not what you think." But this just brought his attention off of Spot and onto me. He screamed something and charged at me. Jim loved football, and it made him a massive hulk of muscle. I had no way of standing up or even dodging out of the way before his bulk slammed into me. He kept swinging his fists down, slamming into my face and my torso. I could feel something tear and my vision went dark, and my body went limp. But that didn't spare me from his repeated punching. And while he was punching, I could hear him saying, "You damn bastard! How could you? You murderer! You damn monster!" And after what seemed like an eternity, the punches stopped falling. I opened my eyes, looking up at him. My left eye was now swollen shut, and my right was pretty badly busted up as well, but I could still make out his shape. He took a deep breath and spit down at me. "You're trash. If only I was with Mom instead of you, then maybe she'd still be alive. She deserved better than you." His words stung far more than his punches. I could feel the blood dripping down my face, and I said something so stupid, whispering it out through my torn lips. "I wish you would just die slowly and burn in hell, you and the deadbeat Paul." He looked down at me again, and anger filled his face again. I was about to say something, but was interrupted by a wispy voice. It echoed around us, carried on the wind. "Such a good offering." I wasn't sure when he got here. 1 second it was nothing, and then the next a massive man towered over me. He was at least 8 foot tall. Black metal plates covered his entire body. He looked a lot like a fantasy knight would, with these sharp spikes adorning the metal armor. His gauntlets formed sharp metal claws. The only unarmored part of his body was his head. He had a strong, handsome face, snow-white skin, short, pitch-black hair, and a large black mustache. But his eyes, I will never forget them. Empty black pits, going into the depths of the abyss. "Well then, boy, shall you die with honor, or will you die a sheep?" But Jim didn't say anything back. He took one look into those twin abysses, and he ran, but he didn't get far. I couldn't follow Abaddon's movements. 1 minute he was standing over me, the next he was in front of Jim, and Jim was now dangling in the air. Abaddon had grabbed him by the arm and lifted him off his feet. "Sheep it is, then." And Jim screamed as he flew through the air back into the clearing, landing not too far from me. Abaddon still stood at the edge of the clearing, still holding Jim's now broken and severed hand. But he didn't enter the clearing again. He just hovered at the edge of the tree line, cloaked in shadows. And Jim was clutching at his stump, and suddenly the hand landed in front of him, casually tossed in by the demon of the abyss. Seeing his hand treated like some sort of toy, it broke something in him. He started to weep and then ran again, in the opposite direction of Abaddon. But in another blink of the eye, Abaddon was holding him by the hair and threw him back into the clearing. Jim was now missing a chunk of his scalp, exposing the white bone of his skull to the night air. And Jim was now hysterical, and he ran again, only to again be tossed back, losing a chunk of flesh from his side. He lay in the clearing and started to say, "Thou Father, that art in heaven," and screamed again, as a large black boot struck his leg with a sickening crack. Now, no need to bring my dad into this." Abaddon bent down over Jim, and he screamed. The things he did to him, I won't repeat them, and even passing out didn't save him. Every time he passed out, the creature just spoke these strange words, and he would immediately jolt awake again with another scream on his lips. And he screamed, and he begged, and he prayed, but nothing stopped the demon. Abaddon only stopped when Jim could no longer scream anymore. And then he vanished, and I felt a cold, sharp hand on my shoulder. "Now it's your turn. Finish him. Sacrifice him to me." I slowly raised to my feet. My head was pounding and I was still feeling nauseous from my beating, but I stumbled over to the lump of flesh that was left of Jim. He said nothing. I don't think he still could. He just stared blankly up at the sky. I knelt over him and struck the blade down into his heart, which currently sat exposed to the night air in his torn open chest cavity. And then Abaddon was next to me. He held out his hand, holding a small metal object. My cell phone. "Call your father." I nearly screamed. I didn't want this anymore. No, please, no more. I can't do this. But he knelt down next to me, those black pits staring into my soul, and lightly said with a smile on his pale face, "You offered me 3, and I will get 3, one way or another. Now, choose." "I need your help. I really do. But I can't. I'm sorry." Tears were running down my face, mixing into the blood-soaked ground. "What a shame." And the demon opened my phone and dialed the number. He then held the small phone up to his massive face and said in the exact copy of my own voice, "Daddy, please help." "Felix, calm down. What happened? Where are you?" I'm at the clearing, in the woods where we would play as kids. But please hurry." And he hung up the phone. Abaddon stared down at me and gently patted my head. "Like I said, one way or another." And then the demon just stood there, craning his neck upwards, staring at the sky in silence. And then an eternity later, I heard loud footsteps heading this way. "Felix, are you there?" "Help!" I screamed back. Suddenly a tall man walked into the clearing, wearing shorts and a cotton t-shirt, his pajamas. He rushed out here without even taking the time to dress properly, all because I needed him. Guilt welled up in my chest, but it was too late now. "Get away from him, you bastard!" And he charged into the clearing, throwing himself towards Abaddon, tackling into his tall form, which still rested his hand on my head. But Abaddon didn't budge, not an inch. Instead, my dad was the one that was thrown down into the cold, blood-drenched mud. He looked up, finally getting a good look at the demon illuminated under the pale moonlight. He stared into those deep, void eyes, and I could see he knew it. He stood no chance against this creature. But instead, to my surprise, he pleaded, "Let him go, take me instead." But Abaddon just laughed and mockingly said, "Let him go? But why would I do that? After all, he called me here. He wished for his death, then yours," he said while pointing down at the mangled form of Jim. My father looked over at the still form of Jim. "He was even the one that struck the final blow." Tears poured down his face as he made eye contact with me. "Son, please, don't let grief damn you to hell. It's not too late. We might die here, but please go back to God. Go to church. He can't play more saw." Abaddon grabbed him by the neck, cutting off his voice. "Enough of your prattle. You'll ruin my fun. Kill him." But I just sat there, staring dumbly at Abaddon. My hands were shaking, my body shivered, but I couldn't do it. "Now don't disappoint me. Otherwise she'll never open her eyes again, and her killer will never be found. You need to redeem yourself, don't you? It's your fault after all." His words struck harder than Jim's blows. He was right after all. It was my fault. Me and some friends had vandalized the library on a dare. We got caught and Mom was called into the office. If I never did that stupid stunt, she would never have been on the road. And she would still be here with me. The only way to save her, the only way to make it up to her, is through me. Dad was now fighting hard, trying to break free from Abaddon's iron grip, but he only managed to hurt himself, drawing blood on the sharp metal plates. I slowly, shakingly stood up and stumbled towards the body dangling from the tall figure's hand. I raised up the knife and said through tears, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but I need him." But then suddenly his big hand grabbed onto mine, wrenching the knife from my hand, and he plunged it straight into his own neck. And this seemed to disappoint Abaddon, and he dropped his body into the dirt. It fell with a sickening, dull thud, and he said, "Well, that was disappointing. But either way, you did well. And it's time for our contract. Your soul, for everything you could ever want. Revenge, your mother, wealth, power, anything." And I stared down at the prone figure of my father, his blood drained into the dirt. And I whispered out, "Deal." Everything went dark and I heard laughter in the distance. I awoke in my bedroom. The sigil from the woods was cut into the back of my right hand, and in the palm of that hand sat a small, ancient piece of paper. I slowly opened that crumpled piece, and 2 lines were neatly written in a flowing script. A name and a Californian address. So now you find me sitting in my bedroom, making this recording. And I only did it for one reason. Because I have this strange premonition that if I do, it'll make its way to you. To the person that struck a white Volkswagen Polo 4 months ago in California. And didn't stop, leaving that poor woman in the wrecked car. I want you to know, we know who you are, and where you live. And when we find you, there won't be a piece left to bury.